tonight. Cleanup continues after a tornado touched down south of Regina on Saturday night. Also, voters head to the ballot box in Alberta.
Who do you trust to become the premier and run this province? And that, I think, is sort of the ballot box question put into one single issue.
Plus, calls for safer streets for cyclists after a 33-year-old Saskatoon teacher was struck and killed last week while biking after school.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Monday, May 28th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening, and thank you for watching. A First Nations man who drew national attention for being racially profiled at a store in Regina 5 years ago says it has happened again. This time, it was at Canadian Tire, and a confrontation turned physical. As Alexander Kwan reports, Regina police have charged a security guard with assault.
Ezekial Bigknife is bruised and scratched, but unbroken. The Regina man is fired up after he says security guards at the Canadian Tire on Albert Street North racially profiled him. With his cell phone camera rolling, he confronted some of them, and they denied it.
Don't play the stupid game with me. The thing is, I'm an Indian. That's why I'm a native First Nation, right?
If you're going to continue to harass us, I'm going to ask you to leave.
I'm not harassing you. Your guys are harassing me.
Then he approached a security guard who he said was particularly aggressive.
I just want your name because you know you're going on the news now, bro.
After that, things got violent.
Now leave.
Touch me.
Leave.
Touch me. No, I'm not.
Leave.
Get your
Leave now.
On the video, you can hear voices shouting at one security guard to stop. Regina police have now charged him with assault.
I'm a carpenter. I need my hands, I need my shoulder, and I can't even lift my tool bag with my shoulder. Can't lift this hand because it's a hairline fracture, and it's definitely painful.
5 years ago, Bigknife documented being followed by a loss prevention officer at a giant tiger in Regina. After the incident drew national attention, he received an apology, and that employee was fired.
You know, it's shocking because I didn't think it happened to me twice in my lifetime.
Canadian Tire says the security guard who has been charged is an employee of a third-party company. In a statement to CBC News, Canadian Tire said, "After reviewing the incident with the security agency, we can confirm that the security guard will not return to the store." The store also says it has strict protocols and training programs for security contractors. That's not good enough for Bigknife. He says Canadian Tire is evading accountability by blaming another company and not examining how its loss prevention program and the racial profiling he says he experienced contributed to the alleged assault.
That's what's bothering me about the whole ordeal. Not once did they reach out, even now.
Bigknife wants Canadian Tire to change its policies so racial profiling doesn't happen.
And then now I got to have a conversation with my son, who's 6 years old. Dad, why did you get beat up? Dad, how come you're beat up like that, Dad? Are you going to jail, Dad? My son was scared that I was going to jail.
He says he's been in contact with lawyers and is considering filing a human rights complaint. Alexander Kwan, CBC News, Regina.
There were closing arguments today in a civil lawsuit against the Saskatchewan Health Authority. Canadian skeleton racer Evan Neufeld is alleging negligence and suing for damages after he suffered a broken neck in the hospital. Neufeld went to Royal University Hospital after having an epileptic seizure in May of 2020. He was assessed and left alone. Then he had another seizure, fell off the bed and broke his neck. His lawsuit alleges hospital staff should have used bed rails to prevent a fall.
I'm lucky to have recovered as well as I did. I'm lucky to be the person I was being hurt. So maybe I can help somebody who might not have luck on their side to avoid the whole situation.
In its defense, the SHA says that bed rails are only used on seizure patients in an emergency as they are considered a form of restraint. It says Neufeld's vitals were normal and he did not meet the criteria for restraints or other precautions. The judge has reserved his decision. A weekend of wild weather in our province, especially in southern Saskatchewan. Thunderstorms wreaked havoc, bringing rain, wind, and hail. Environment Canada has also confirmed this tornado touched down near Regina Saturday night. It formed just south of the city around 9 o'clock and moved northeast, just missing the city limits. The twister was only on the ground briefly and has been given a preliminary rating of EF0. That's the lowest possible rating. It's the first tornado in the country this year. Now, our weather specialist, Ethan Williams, joins me now. And Ethan, that tornado was the result of a weather pattern that we've been seeing for days.
Yeah, that's right. And it all starts in our upper atmosphere. Big area of high pressure caught under a ridge here. This has been stuck this way for about the past week. Ontario seeing some very pleasant conditions, hot, risk for grass fires and wildfires in that part of the country. But for us, we've been caught in the more unpleasant side of it, a bit of a trough. And that means at the surface level, we've kind of been on repeat for these past few days. Humid air starting to build in, low pressure systems easily able to move in because there is no high pressure blocking them out. That's been interacting with the humid air, bringing in thunderstorms. And then we have the jet stream as well interacting with all of that. And that has added the third ingredient, which triggered that tornado around Regina on Saturday, and that is that the jet stream has been able to rotate the thunderstorms. And as you can see, very high levels around 9 o'clock Saturday night around Regina of that ingredient needed to get those thunderstorms spinning and moving a lot faster. Thankfully, just north of there, it looked like the storm energy dropped off a little bit for that, so that's why we didn't see those tornadoes continuing, and plus we had daytime heating and energy dropping off as we headed through the rest of the overnight hours. Now, this tornado has been rated an EF0 for now, but newly discovered damage from that tornado is being surveyed and could increase that rating. Dane Patterson has more on where that damage is and the cleanup that's ongoing.
Cole Zinkin, his family, and a handful of others are still cleaning up the wreckage from this weekend's storm. A tornado whirled through their farmyard southeast of Regina. It ripped wood and metal off their shop and tossed it several kilometers.
I mean, you can see what it did, right? I don't know, there's not too much to say about it. It's gone.
Cole and his wife, Jennifer, were at their cottage when it hit. Their neighbor messaged them and asked them if they were okay. It took a moment and some follow-up photos of their metal shed for Zinkin to understand what had happened.
Kind of packed up real quick and came home and found the gas was still on, the power was still on, so luckily actually no sparks or anything happened and could have blown up, I guess.
When you got the shop that's only that far away and to have your houses still standing, because I don't know that would have been just awful. So we're looking at the positives in it, and everybody's safe. That's also number one.
The debris was splayed across the land rented by their neighbor.
The debris from the tornado got blown onto our land, so we just got to get it cleaned up before we can go to work on the land for sure. It's been in the way, but they almost got all of it cleaned up already.
But also looking for all the small debris from the nails, anything that can harm the equipment, right, or wreck their equipment. And then next it's going to be the bigger mess over here, and this is already seeded, so we also have to be careful that we're not going to wreck their crop.
They're anxious to finish seeding and to start spraying, while also dealing with all the work of filing an insurance claim. Dane Patterson, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Cycling advocates in Saskatoon want the streets to become safer for people on bicycles. The calls have grown louder since a 33-year-old teacher was struck and killed last week while biking after school. Liam O'Connor has that story.
A white ghost bike is a somber memorial to Natasha Fox. The teacher and her 2 children were riding their bikes near this intersection last Wednesday. Fox was killed in a collision with a cement truck. The children were not injured. Saskatoon's cycling community has been left shaken by what happened.
When it happened, I think that it really just shook us because we could picture ourselves in those intersections, our kids, our families, other cyclists that you see on the road. So it was heartbreaking to hear of this, and it really just, I think, wakes us up to the fact that we have to take action in the city.
Bike rental shop owner Nancy Broughton says Saskatoon needs more protected bike lanes, signage, and other infrastructure.
A lot more can be done with a fundamental shift in our thinking for how we could bike in the city.
A fellow cyclist says she's lived in Saskatoon since 2008, and the infrastructure for cyclists has not improved.
We're 15 years later, and the city is still pretty much the same for biking safety.
Cynthia Hernandez says everyone has a right to cycle safely, to work, to school, for exercise, or just for fun. She says this tragedy has shown everyone the urgency of the situation.
I think just by what has been going on in these last few days, it feels like there is an interesting from the community and from different parts of the government to move some of those initiatives that probably have been looked at but have been sitting on the side of someone's desk.
On the weekend, the city's mayor tweeted that he's heard concerns about the safety of the intersection where Fox died and will work to make improvements.
On Wednesday, people are planning a rally that'll end at this spot. They're hoping that it'll lead to a better and safer city for everyone. Liam O'Connor, CBC News, Saskatoon.
We requested a comment on bike safety from the City of Saskatoon. In an email, the General Manager of Transportation and Construction said the city won't comment on last week's collision while police investigate. He said some improvements will be made for cyclists along College Drive. A team of students from the U of S is getting ready to send what it believes to be the first made in Saskatchewan satellite into space. This small cube satellite, dubbed RadSat SK, will be launched to the International Space Station through the SpaceX CRS-28 rocket. From the space station, it will be sent into its own orbit, where it's supposed to stay for about a year. While it's up there, the team in Saskatoon will collect experimental radiation data.
I think it's really opening Saskatchewan up into the space sector. Like I mentioned, we're developing a lot of connections with all the other universities working on the CubeSat project, with the Canadian Space Agency, other industry partners. So we're getting our foot in the door, and we could potentially have more future projects.
I kind of had no direction when I started school, but the space project kind of has given me something to look forward to and like a goal to aim for in my career. I want to work in space.
Development of the RadSat SK Cube satellite started in the spring of 2018 with about 20 undergrad engineering students. Since then, hundreds of students have been involved in various capacities. The creation of the satellite is part of a project for the Canadian Space Agency. The goal is to increase student interest in STEM while involving them in real space missions. Some of the team is headed to Florida tomorrow to watch the rocket launch on June 3rd. That is this coming Saturday. Well, it might be bright colors and washable, but the Greater Saskatoon Catholic Schools downtown office was hit with an apparent act of vandalism this morning. It follows a leaked internal email last week instructing principals to keep students away from an LGBTQ-themed rainbow tent at the upcoming Nutrien Children's Festival. It was shared widely on social media and met with backlash by many who felt it was intolerant. The Children's Festival and the rainbow tent open on Thursday. We'll be back after the break.
This weather update is brought to you by Capital GMC Buick Cadillac. Super Sierra and SUV sale is on now.
Welcome back. Our weather specialist Ethan Williams joins me now. We talked a lot about that tornado Saturday night, and that storm was so different for everyone, and some people saw a lot of rain.
Yeah, that's right, especially in Regina. Downpours in some parts of the city, and others not picking up so much, but we averaged out kind of around the 30 to 40 millimeter range in Regina. Now, keep in mind that that was over the period of about 45 minutes or so, so really, that's quite a lot of rain to be falling in a short amount of time. That's why we saw that kind of widespread flooding as well. But even look at Craven, just north of the city, only 4 millimeters. That's how tiny that cell was. Even the difference between Davin and Vibank, they're not that far from each other. Vibank just east of there, and a 10 millimeter difference in that part of the province. Now, earlier I mentioned this big stagnant ridge built in over Ontario. Over these next few days, that's really not going to change. In fact, it's just going to kind of expand westward a bit, and that'll be fueling some warmer air toward us. But unfortunately, it looks like we're going to be caught in that kind of unsettled pattern. And a little bit unsettled today. Some cells moving through southwestern Saskatchewan. We had a couple severe thunderstorm warnings in place for portions of eastern Alberta that have dropped off, but a couple cells could turn severe in the early evening hours tonight. A lot of the severe weather, though, that we saw over the weekend now moving into Manitoba. Temperatures today warming up from the weekend, getting into those mid to upper 20s in portions of south and central. Where rain is falling in the southwest, we're seeing temperatures drop just a bit. Little bit of a humid X factor with these today, but not quite as much as we're going to be seeing probably in the coming days. Here's how things are going to be shaping up. Overnight tonight, widespread showers and thunderstorms of the non-severe variety likely. As we head into tomorrow, that risk going to return for a lot of us, especially pop-up storms through south and central. Quite dry through the north tomorrow, but we will watch as we head into Wednesday, Thursday rather, as a bit of a system is going to move through, and that is going to be bringing some relief to areas impacted by forest fires. And that is good news because the risk has gone up again in that part of the province. Extreme risk in portions of northwestern Saskatchewan, that's likely going to be coming down in the coming days. And that is good because the Saskatchewan Public Safety Agency saying that people affected by the Shaw and Vermette fires in communities like Buffalo Narrows and Isle La Crosse being able to return home. Over the weekend, they started moving back. So that bit of rainfall is going to help solidify that status and bring those lower risks to that area. But still quite a bit of air quality statements through the north, and the winds are not really going to be impacting things all that much over these couple of days. Outside of thunderstorms, things staying relatively calm wind-wise as they have been these past few days. Smoke likely going to be confined to the areas where we're seeing the fires, not moving into south and central Saskatchewan all that much. But a quite unsettled forecast, especially for south and central Saskatchewan. Look at that. Pretty much every single day this upcoming week. Regina looking at some very warm temperatures, humidex values into the low 30s, but a lot of instability. And for Saskatoon, you might get a bit of a break from it on Wednesday, but then Thursday, Friday, we're right back into it. Rain, rain, rain. So, Sam, I know you said you like a nice spring thunderstorm. There you go. It's all there for you.
But what's happening to the other side of you?
Little bit of a reprieve, I guess. You know, don't pay attention to that.
Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
Oh, this is not one for me. Visitors to the London Zoo got their chance to face their fears this weekend. The Friendly Spider program is designed to help a person get used to the 8-legged critter. Some people are slightly scared. Others have an almost paralyzing phobia. Participants even learn to hold them in their hands. London Zoo officials say they've seen 90% success rates. We'll be back after the break. Voters in Alberta are casting ballots today to elect their next provincial government. Polls suggest the United Conservative Party and the Alberta NDP are in a tight race. As Malika Karim reports, Calgary is expected to be where the election is won or lost.
Battleground Calgary is the focus of today's election in Alberta. The UCP, along with the NDP, are looking to sway votes amongst small C Conservatives. Here in this riding of Calgary-Bow, we have UCP incumbent Demetrius Nicolaitis, the Advanced Education Minister, squaring up against a well-known face in Calgary, 6-term City Councillor Drew Farrell. CBC pollster Janet Brown on what her research showed about voters in Alberta.
We're calling this a close election, but out of 87 seats, it's really not close in about 67 of them. It's a close election in 20 seats. So we're really going to zero in on those seats that are mostly in Calgary, and we're going to be looking to see whether, which party can get their vote out. Which voters are most enthusiastic? Which ones get out to vote?
Brown also mentioning in her polling numbers that about 12% of voters are still undecided. So that's where these candidates are looking for their votes. Brown's research showed healthcare was top of mind, followed by the economy, inflation, and leadership. With trust in the government elected being one of the key issues, one former political columnist weighing in on how heavily this will matter for voters.
They're both promising to do better on the economy. They're both promising jobs. Yes, the UCP is spending $68 billion. The NDP would be spending just as much if they were in power. So it becomes an issue of who do you trust to become the premier and run this province? And that, I think, is sort of the ballot box question put into one single issue.
Polling stations in Alberta are open until 8 p.m. tonight. Malika Karim, CBC News, Calgary.
If all goes to plan, by the end of tonight, Albertans will have elected 87 MLAs to represent them in the province's 31st Legislative Assembly. If you want to watch it all play out, there are options. You can watch Alberta Votes Election Night Special live on CBC News Network, on CBC Gem, or online at cbc.ca/Edmonton. The action gets underway at 7:30. The federal government is boosting funding for Indigenous victims and survivors of crime. Justice Minister David Lametti says Ottawa will spend more than $95 million over 5 years and another $20 million annually on an ongoing basis. He says it will help improve availability and access to culturally safe services.
We need for people to be able to have increased safety and protection, improve access to justice, respect rights, and support healing from the aftermath of harm and victimization. And the new ways should be Indigenous-led, sustainable, and responsive. Indigenous agencies and organizations know what they need from the justice system and what they need to assist victims in their healing journey. So this simply is the best way forward in supporting First Nations, Inuit, and Métis victims and survivors of crime. To all victims and survivors, you deserve to know that these important programs will be there for as long as you need them.
And Ethan is back with one last look at your weather.
Starting sunny tomorrow in Regina and southern Saskatchewan, Sam, at 17 degrees, a warm morning. Winds pretty light, and as we move through the afternoon, may see a little bit of cloud cover building, and again, a risk of some thunderstorms later in the afternoon. The risk is on the lighter side. We're not expecting a lot of severe thunderstorms, and the risk is a lot lower over these next couple of days or so here. Saskatoon, similar conditions. We are looking at mainly sunny skies tomorrow at 16. I think we'll see a little less cloud cover in the Saskatoon area, 25 already by the noon hour. Let me get out of this guy's way. This is a moose moving through Regina's, South Regina this morning. Leanne capturing this. She said her dog was barking. She looked up and yes, he was making his way through. Out you go, Sam. I think they need to go back into the field.
A very sneaky moose.
Yeah, very.
Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
And before we leave you, a big day for movie fans in Regina. The new IMAX theater Scream has arrived, and it was not something they could just walk through the front door.
This is going to give us access to all of the latest documentary content, as well as some of the new Hollywood content that's coming out.
The Kramer IMAX Theater at the Science Center has been closed since March 6th for renovations. The screen is the biggest in the province at more than 50 feet tall and 70 feet wide. It comes as one solid piece on a roll. A window had to be removed to get it inside, and it's no small effort. The crate weighs almost 1,900 pounds. The theater's also added laser projectors, new seats, and renovated the lobby. It hopes to start showing movies in June with a full opening in early July. And that is it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can head to cbc.ca/sask or subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel. Ethan will be back with more local news at 11. Up next, Game 6 between Vegas and Dallas. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the game. Have a good night.